shot and killed in Gwinnett County has been identified as an Atlanta rapper. Investigators say the victim was 33-year-old Tevin Hood, also known as T Hood. He was best known for his songs Ready to Go and Percolator. Now, he posted on social media just weeks ago promoting a concert in Atlanta. Investigators say the shooting.
Atlanta is on fire tonight. A rapper's murder, a reality star's daughter, and a family name already drowning in scandal. This isn't just gossip. It's a storm that could take down the Frost legacy forever. The question isn't what happened. The question is, who's lying? Ladies and gentlemen, stop scrolling because Atlanta just shook under a scandal so wild it makes a love and hip-hop reunion fight look like a polite Sunday dinner. And at the center of it all is none other than Kirk Frost, the man who has already survived more cheating scandals, baby mama exposés, and on-screen screaming matches than most reality stars could ever dream of. But this time, it's not about him sneaking around behind Rashida's back or VH1 cameras catching him in some sneaky business deal gone wrong. No. This time, the spotlight has landed on his daughter, Kelsey Frost, who suddenly found her name splashed all across social media after the tragic, mysterious, and downright suspicious death of her boyfriend, the local Atlanta rapper known as T Hood, whose real name was Kevin Hood, a young man with dreams, talent, and a fan base that was just starting to grow before everything came crashing down on that August night in Snellville, Georgia, when he was found inside his home with multiple gunshot wounds. Not one, not two, but enough that any detective worth their badge immediately started asking the chilling question that every street and every blog wanted answered. Who wanted this man gone and why? And if you think the official police report helped calm things, think again, because all it gave us was a bare-bones story about officers responding to a call, rushing T Hood to the hospital, and doctors doing everything they could before pronouncing him dead shortly after arrival. But for the streets, for the fans, for the blogs and the trolls and the anonymous Instagram detectives who treat rumors like gospel, that wasn't enough. And within hours, the theories started flying faster than a drink at a VH1 reunion taping. And right there in the eye of the storm was Kelsey Frost, accused by strangers she had never met, accused by trolls hiding behind burner accounts, and accused in whispers that spread so fast they practically took on a life of their own. Because, let's be real, when the Frost name is attached to anything, drama multiplies. And what made this scandal explode even further was the fact that T Hood's sister Jada didn't outright say Kelsey was involved, but she heavily implied it in a way that the messy world of social media translated into a full-on confession. And just like that, the grieving girlfriend became public enemy number one. But pause for a second and put yourself in Kelsey's shoes. You just lost the man you love, you're in shock. You can barely process that he's gone. And instead of being wrapped in comfort, you're being dragged online. Your DMs filled with hate. Your comments flooded with accusations calling you everything from a mastermind to a snake. And while you're trying to breathe, trying to grieve, the whole city is gossiping about you like you're some villain in a crime documentary. And that's where the story takes an even darker turn, because in the messy court of public opinion, implied guilt is treated as proven guilt, and the more people talked, the worse it got. And yes, the Frost family has always been a lightning rod for scandal. Kirk Frost has been clowned for years over cheating storylines, surprise children, and shady business moves. So when his daughter's name popped up connected to a murder, nobody waited for facts. They jumped headfirst into conspiracy mode. But here's the messy truth. There was no big party that night, no house full of suspects, because T Hood's mother Yolanda came forward to shut that down, saying there wasn't a crowd in the living room or some big fight raging out of control. And that makes things even scarier, because if there wasn't a group of people there, then who exactly was with him when the bullets started flying? And why did it end in gunfire? And that's where the theories split into three messy camps. One group swearing it was money, another saying it was industry beef with someone who didn't like T Hood's come up, and the last group spinning the most dramatic version, that it was a domestic fallout where Kelsey Frost was either the one who triggered the chain of events or the one who opened the door for whoever did. But before you grab your pitchfork, you need to hear her side, because she didn't stay silent. She didn't hide behind a lawyer or a PR team. She went straight to her Instagram story with a message so raw and so emotional you could feel the pain through the screen, admitting that everyone told her to stay quiet, maybe family, maybe lawyers, maybe just strangers in her inbox. But she couldn't hold it in anymore because, in her own words, the love of my life is gone. And in that post, she poured her heart out, painting a picture of a woman devastated not only by loss, but also by the twisted fact that while she was grieving, People were calling her a murderer, threatening her life, and turning her heartbreak into entertainment. And that's when her tone shifted from sorrow to fury. Furious that people who weren't even there were acting like detectives. Furious that strangers were piecing together half-truths from Instagram posts and random gossip. Furious that while she was already broken, she was being painted as some mastermind villain. And then she dropped a detail that flipped everything on its head. T. Hood had already been shot before, 3 times in a separate incident, and was still recovering from those wounds when this happened, which made her message clear. Why on earth would she, the woman who had been helping him through recovery, ever put him in harm's way again? Why would she risk everything just to destroy the man she called the love of her life? And according to her, the only person she called that night was his mother. Not her own family, not cousins or brothers for backup. Just his mom. But of course, the internet wasn't buying it because once the trolls decide you're guilty, no crying selfie, no emotional story, and no tear-filled rant can flip the verdict. And that's the curse of being a Frost. Your scandals don't just trend, they blow up into cultural events. And this was no different, because even with her declaration of love, even with her promise that she would never hurt him, the comment section stayed ruthless. And then she ended with a gut punch of a line, begging T. Hood to come visit her and take her with him. A heartbreaking plea that some read as genuine grief and others dissected as manipulative PR. But no matter which side you believed, it made the story explode even bigger. And here's the twist. The police, the only ones who could actually clear things up, kept completely silent, not naming a single suspect, not giving a single update, just fueling the fire as social media wolves ripped the story apart. And the silence became gasoline, turning every rumor into a wildfire. And before long, anonymous Instagram pages were posting exclusives that sounded more like late-night fan fiction than evidence, claiming neighbors heard shouting, a woman's voice yelling threats like, "You'll regret this," blurry pictures of a black SUV with no plates parked outside, and even a supposed police report leak about footprints in the backyard, which of course the internet detectives matched to Kelsey's sneakers in old Instagram pictures, ignoring the fact that half of Atlanta owns the same pair. But once people see what they want to see, logic doesn't matter. And by then, the follow the money theory had entered the chat with claims that T. Hood had signed a small record deal and gotten an advance that made him a target. And whether or not that was true didn't matter, because in the messy world of social media, a juicy theory always beats a boring fact. And while fans fought in comment sections, some swearing Kelsey was innocent, others convinced she was guilty, the city buzzed with whispers, DJs refused to spin Frost-connected tracks, and even fringe conspiracy theories started painting Kirk Frost himself as someone whose connections might be slowing the investigation. Down and through it all, Kelsey Frost stood accused, whether fairly or not, as Atlanta asked the question that still hasn't been answered. Was she a grieving girlfriend unfairly dragged into chaos? Or was she the hidden mastermind in a hip-hop tragedy that turned into the messiest scandal of 2025? If you thought the storm around Kelsey Frost would calm down after her emotional Instagram outburst, think again, because the chaos only grew louder, darker, and more tangled, spilling from the messy world of social media into the studios, salons, and street corners of Atlanta, where whispers spread faster than the traffic down I-85. And suddenly everyone had a theory. Everyone had a so-called exclusive. And everyone was acting like they were closer to the truth than the detectives themselves. Yet the actual investigators from Gwinnett County stayed dead silent, leaving the public to fill the void with rumor after rumor, leak after leak, and grainy clip after grainy clip. And it was in this vacuum of information that the internet did what it always does: turn a tragedy into entertainment, turning Kelsey Frost into either a victim being destroyed by lies or a femme fatale at the center of a murder mystery, with no middle ground in sight because neutrality doesn't trend, and Atlanta thrives on scandal more than Sunday sermons. First came the so-called neighbor leak, an anonymous Instagram page swearing they had audio of shouting from T. Hood's house an hour before the shots were fired, claiming a female voice could be heard screaming threats like, "You'll regret this." But the recording itself never surfaced, only the claim. And in 2025, a claim is as good as proof if it racks up enough shares. And then the blogs jumped on another alleged clue: blurry screenshots of a dark SUV supposedly parked outside T. Hood's home with its headlights off. A shadowy blob that could have been anything from a Tahoe to a trash can. But that didn't stop the blogs from throwing captions like, "Is this the getaway car?" While thousands of comments tagged Kelsey, demanding answers, dragging her, named through hashtags like it was already carved into a court file. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, someone leaked, or claimed to leak, a single page of the police report, highlighting a line about 2 sets of footprints in the backyard, one matched to T. Hood and the other unmatched. But before anyone could confirm whether that report was even real, shoe detectives on Twitter started pulling old pictures of Kelsey in sneakers that vaguely resembled the unknown prints, ignoring the fact that half of Atlanta was wearing the same pair. But again, logic didn't matter. What mattered was the narrative. And the narrative was already locked in. Because once you're guilty in the court of public opinion, every picture, every old tweet, every Instagram caption becomes evidence. And for Kelsey Frost, every second online was another reminder that the world had made its decision without waiting for proof. Then came the TikTok theory that T. Hood had recently signed a small record deal, allegedly pocketing an advance he hadn't touched yet. And according to this theory, someone close to him wanted that money and decided to take the most permanent solution possible, and because "it's always about money in the industry" makes a perfect caption, the theory spread like wildfire, adding another layer of suspicion, another motive, and another reason for trolls to point the finger at Kelsey. Because who's closer to an artist than the girlfriend who knows his every move? Meanwhile, Atlanta rappers and producers started dropping cryptic posts, some offering the generic RIP and prayers, while others posted lines like, "Watch the ones closest to you," which fans instantly treated like insider confirmation that Kelsey was guilty, and those vague comments became screenshots, then blogs, then viral proof, the kind that gets reposted 100 times until nobody even remembers where it came from, only that it exists. And if all that wasn't enough, the secret party rumor crawled back into circulation, a story that claimed T. Hood wasn't alone that night, that a tiny invite-only gathering had taken place before the shots were fired, and that blurry footage existed of Kelsey Frost dancing in the living room hours earlier. But the so-called evidence was a low-quality clip that could have been any woman in Atlanta with long hair and decent lighting. But still, the uploader swore multiple sources confirmed it was Kelsey, though none of those sources were named, of course, because "for their safety" plays better than "we made it up." And in the circus of viral gossip, mystery always sells more than clarity. And then the moment that pushed the story into overdrive, Kelsey went live on Instagram for the first time since the tragedy, starting calm, thanking people for support, saying she was still processing. But when someone in the comments typed, "Girl, we know you did it," her entire energy flipped, her eyes locked on the camera, and she said through clenched teeth, "You don't know me, you don't know what I've been through, and you don't know the truth." And the internet lost its mind, replaying the clip frame by frame, analyzing every blink, every twitch, every tone shift, with some swearing she'd just confessed to hiding something and others saying she sounded like a woman at the breaking point. But either way, the live turned into gasoline on the fire. And because social media thrives on escalation, the next wild claim to surface was the bodyguard theory. Someone online insisted Kelsey had hired private security after T. Hood's first shooting, but that one of those supposed protectors had turned on him, pulling the trigger themselves. A betrayal plot that had zero evidence but sounded like the perfect, shocking twist headline for gossip blogs. And so it spread anyway, plastered across TikTok edits and YouTube thumbnails with fire emojis and exclusive banners, and once again Kelsey's name was the headline, the villain or the victim depending on which side you believed. Offline, the fallout was just as messy. Record labels that had been in quiet talks with Kelsey suddenly froze negotiations, issuing bland PR statements about focusing on their current rosters, which everyone knew was code for "we don't want to touch this scandal until the smoke clears." And even a local councilman stepped into the mess, framing it as concern for community safety, but clearly using the headline to score political points, because what politician doesn't want their name attached to a hip-hop scandal that already dominates every feed? Meanwhile, whispers grew about an internal task force poking around the case. Not officially, of course, because nothing says "trust us" like an investigation that no one will admit exists, and insiders whispered that charges might be coming. Though nobody agreed on against who, because every theory had its own villain, whether it was Kelsey Frost, an old collaborator, or some faceless industry rival. And through all of this, the internet kept building its own courtroom. TikTok threads comparing Kelsey's old posts to her new ones, Twitter essays accusing her grief of looking performative because she hadn't posted a crying selfie. YouTube channels flipping overnight from defending her as a victim to uploading videos with titles like, "Was Kelsey Frost playing us all along?" Because loyalty doesn't trend as fast as betrayal, and betrayal makes better thumbnails. The Frost family's silence only made things worse. Kirk Frost popped up once at a charity event, smiled for cameras, dodged every question, and said, only, "Family's complicated, we're dealing with it," which was both the vaguest and most accurate line possible. But in the streets, every non-answer was treated as proof of a cover-up. And conspiracy theorists swore that because Kirk had industry ties and reality TV connections, the case was being slowed, evidence hidden, witnesses silenced, and while there was no proof, proof was never needed in the circus of viral content, because outrage is its own evidence. Then came the so-called surveillance leak, a grainy black and white clip allegedly showing a hooded figure approaching T. Hood's house, too blurry to identify anyone, too short to show what happened next, but captions screamed, "Is this Kelsey?" Even though the shadow could have been anyone with a hoodie and 2 legs. And still it racked up millions of views overnight. Another nail in the coffin of public opinion. By now, the case wasn't even about T. Hood anymore. His tragedy had been swallowed by the storm, and the entire spotlight was on Kelsey Frost, with fans, haters, politicians, rappers, and random strangers online, all treating her as either Atlanta's most heartbroken girlfriend or its most dangerous villain. And through it all, the real police investigation remained silent, fueling the idea that the truth was being buried, that the Frost family was too powerful, or that nobody actually had answers. And when a rumor hit that a podcaster had secured an exclusive interview with Kelsey, only for the episode to be mysteriously pulled hours before release, speculation hit another fever pitch. Some swore she'd been silenced by legal threats, others believed she'd been pressured by people with power, and her own cryptic late-night post, "Y'all will see the truth soon enough," written over a black background, only made the theories multiply because in this city, silence doesn't stop rumors, it supercharges them. And by the end of week 3, the question wasn't even, what happened to T. Hood? Anymore, it was, who is Kelsey Frost really? A grieving girlfriend unfairly dragged through the mud. A cunning mastermind hiding the darkest secret Atlanta has seen in years. Or just another young woman chewed up and spat out by a culture that treats scandal as content and heartbreak as clicks. And whichever version you believe, one thing is clear. The next move in this deadly game is coming, and when it lands, the fallout will be bigger than anyone is ready for. By the time the scandal reached its 3rd week, Atlanta wasn't just buzzing about Kelsey Frost anymore. It was drowning in the noise because the tragedy of T. Hood had been transformed into a circus where every rumor was a headline, every blurry screenshot was treated like a sworn affidavit, and every silence from the Frost family was turned into proof of guilt, cover-up, or corruption. And at the center of it all was a young woman who either lost the love of her life or engineered the fall of a rising rapper. Depending on which version of the story you believed, and the line between fact and fantasy had long since disappeared, because what started as whispers on gossip blogs had now become dinner table talk, barbershop debates, and podcast episodes, stretching for hours with self-made experts treating speculation as evidence, turning Kelsey into a symbol of everything messy about hip-hop, fame, and family in Atlanta. The storm didn't explode all at once. It spread slow like smoke seeping through cracks, filling every corner until no one could escape it. And soon it wasn't just about whether Kelsey Frost was guilty or innocent. It was about what her name represented, because record labels were backing away from even mentioning her. DJs were refusing to play songs connected to the Frost family. And small promoters whispered that booking anything with the Frost brand attached was a risk they couldn't afford. Which meant the Frost empire, once messy but untouchable, was suddenly shaking under the weight of a scandal they couldn't spin into TV ratings. And yet through all of this, Kirk Frost stayed almost silent, showing up only once in public with that line, "Family's complicated, we're dealing with it." A line so vague it was basically a blank page people filled in with their own theories. Because to some that meant he was hiding his daughter's role, to others it meant he was as much in the dark as the rest of Atlanta. And to the Frost haters, it was just proof that the family had gotten away with too much for too long, and that karma had finally kicked the door down. Meanwhile, the internet worked overtime to keep the story alive, because in 2025, a scandal isn't just gossip. It's content, it's views, it's ad money, it's clout. And Kelsey Frost was now the star of a show she never asked to headline, with TikTok edits making her look like a tragic widow one day and a cold-hearted villain the next. YouTube commentary channels churning out hour-long investigations that recycled the same leaks but gave them dramatic titles like "The Truth About Kelsey Frost They Don't Want You to Know," and Twitter threads stretching into hundreds of replies arguing about whether her grief was real or staged. And then came the so-called smoking gun. A grainy surveillance clip supposedly leaked from a nearby house showing a hooded figure moving toward T. Hood's side door minutes before the shooting, but the clip was so blurry it could have been anyone. Still, the caption screamed, "Is this Kelsey?" And within hours, it racked up millions of views. And suddenly, even people who had never heard of T. Hood before were weighing in, picking sides, and turning the case into a global spectacle. But what almost everyone missed was the emotional cost on Kelsey, who posted a black screen story saying, "Y'all will see the truth soon enough." A sentence so vague it became a riddle, fueling a fresh wave of speculation about whether she was preparing to reveal evidence, confess, or disappear. And at the same time, a rumor broke that a popular Atlanta podcaster had locked down an exclusive interview with her, only for the episode to be mysteriously pulled hours before release. Every post about it deleted, leaving fans convinced she had been silenced by lawyers, pressured by producers, or warned by people far more powerful than the Frost family. And that mystery turned the gossip into something bigger than just a messy tragedy, because now people started whispering about cover-ups, about hidden hands pulling strings, about evidence disappearing, about how Kirk Frost's ties to TV and Atlanta's music scene might be slowing things down. And though none of it was proven, proof was irrelevant. Because the internet isn't a courtroom, it's a stage, and whoever yells the loudest writes the script. Still, the one thing no one could deny was that the real investigation had gone quiet. And when investigations go quiet in Atlanta, people start believing it's on purpose, that someone doesn't want the truth to come out, and soon hashtags yay. Like Jward Free Kelsey and Justice for Hood were trending side by side, with merch popping up online, hoodies, t-shirts, even coffee mugs, turning grief into profit and scandal into a brand. Offline, the streets grew colder too. Salons whispered that working with Kelsey was career suicide, producers avoided collaborations that might tie them to her, and old acquaintances suddenly remembered sketchy things she'd supposedly done years ago, even if those stories had no receipts. Because in the messy marketplace of scandal, every rumor is a currency, and the price of survival is high. And while all this noise raged on, one ugly truth remained. T. Hood's death was still unsolved, his family still waiting for justice, his fans still replaying old tracks like clues were hidden in the lyrics, and his mother still standing firm that the party rumor was false. But none of that stopped the internet from pushing forward with their own version of events, because clarity doesn't trend, chaos does. So here we are, weeks later, drowning in leaks, screenshots, cryptic posts, and theories stacked so high you can't see the ground anymore, left to ask the only questions that matter. Was Kelsey Frost unfairly destroyed by lies and dragged through a storm she didn't create? Or was she the unseen hand behind a headline that shook Atlanta to its core? And more importantly, who benefits from this chaos? Because let's be real, in this era, scandals aren't just tragedies, they're monetized, they're branded, they're spun into podcasts and documentaries, and if you think everyone involved doesn't know that, you're fooling yourself. So now it's your turn, the jury of the internet, to decide, is she the grieving girlfriend, the silent mastermind, or just another casualty of a culture that turns every heartbreak into a hashtag, every crime into content, and every messy headline into entertainment? And until the day someone is cuffed, tried, and proven guilty, the truth will stay buried under the noise, the tea will keep boiling, and Atlanta will keep watching. Because here the drama never ends. It only reloads for the next episode.